Storytime about how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So just some background information. My husband and I got engaged 2 years ago, and this whole situation happened a month after we got married. So fast forward, it's a Sunday morning. Well, usually every week on Sunday, I clean the whole house. So I woke up, went into the bathroom to take my ring off, and I could not get it off. Mind you, I had gained a little bit of weight since my husband and I got engaged. Anyways, I tried butter, I tried soap, I tried everything, even oil. So after trying to get it off for an hour straight, my finger was 3 times bigger than it usually is. So at this point, I'm really scared that I'm going to have to get it cut off. Because 1, I didn't want to ruin it, and 2, it was really expensive. So I call my husband and he's like, "Oh, call your dad. Firefighters always know what to do." So I called my dad and thank God he lived 5 minutes away because he drove over really quickly. Like for part 2. Part 2 of how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So like I said, my dad lived 5 minutes away, so he just rushed over to my house. And we tried a few more things to get it off. We tried Windex, we tried the dental floss, none of it was working. So my dad told me that we were going to have to cut it off with pliers. So he comes over with the pliers, cuts the ring off. Well, a few days later, I had taken it to the same place that we got it to get the band fixed. Or replaced. While I was there, I decided to get it appraised, just for insurance reasons. So a few days later, I go and pick up my ring, and when I get home, I look at the appraisal. It was not the same one that I had picked out in the store. It looked exactly like it, but there was like a $20,000 price difference. So right now, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm not mad about the money part. I'm more mad that my husband lied to me. I was more upset about the fact that he had lied to me. So I had made dinner reservations for the next night, so that way I could hopefully bring up the conversation about it, like for part 3. Part 3 of how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So like I said, I had made reservations for him and I to go out to dinner so that way I could hopefully spark up the conversation about it. So when we finally sat down, I had started up the conversation. I had told him that when I took my ring in to get it fixed, I also got it appraised. And his face immediately changed after that, but he wasn't saying anything. He was like, "Oh, okay, how did that go?" So at this point, I was tired of beating around the bush, and I was like, "Why wouldn't you just tell me if we were having money troubles?" And he was like, "What do you mean? We're not having any money troubles. I'm fine." One thing about my husband is that he is very wealthy, and he takes pride in the fact that he is very wealthy. So obviously, me right there kind of questioning his wealth, he fucked up and told me the truth. He was like, "Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I accidentally gave the ring that I was supposed to give you to a girl I was seeing at the time, and I just never got around to replacing yours." So fast forward to present day, I am currently moving all of my stuff out of our house and filing for divorce.
Am I the asshole for insulting my boyfriend's weight in front of his friends? Relevant to the story, my boyfriend is 6 feet tall and about 229 pounds. I am 5'6" and about 120 pounds. From a medical standpoint, my boyfriend is obese and I am fairly normal weight. I really don't mind his weight. He was obese when I met him and that wasn't a problem for me. He has struggled with his weight for many years and constantly talks about wanting to lose weight but never actually diets or exercises. Again, not a huge deal for me, but I try to be supportive and offer him advice or general encouragement whenever he discusses his desire to lose weight. An occasional point of contention between us is that he has a tendency to offer me diet advice. For example, whenever I make a smoothie, he says, "You shouldn't drink those things, they're full of hidden calories." Or when I do strength training, he says, "You'll just gain weight because you'll put on too much muscle." It's annoying because nutrition and fitness are actually big passions of mine. I'm not an expert by any means, but I've done several courses and I feel I know more than the average person. Plus, I feel that I can demonstrably show that I can manage my own weight. So I don't like that he constantly feels the need to give me advice. This past weekend, he and I met up with a few of his friends at a beer garden. At some point, the guys were talking about their experiences with online dating. My boyfriend said that he'd used Tinder prior to meeting me, but then he deleted it because there were too many desperate fat chicks. He said this in such a disgusted, dismissive way that I genuinely saw red for a second and just blurted out, "Seriously, you're going to criticize fat chicks?" There was a really long, awkward pause, and then one of his friends made a joke and the conversation sort of moved on. But my boyfriend didn't speak to me for the rest of the evening. He texted me the next day and to say that it was incredibly rude and disrespectful to comment on his weight, especially in front of his friends. He says he thinks he wants a few days away from me to decide whether or not he can forgive me. I agree it was rude of me to call him out in front of his friends, but I also think what he said was obnoxious and borderline sexist. I've apologized to him, but I'm not sure if I'm genuinely the asshole here, so am I the asshole?
I adopted my dog Tank when I was 20. He had minor issues like leash walking and prey drive, issues that I fixed. This dog is a saint, never bit anyone or shown any aggression. He's very well trained and now he's 5 years old and 60 pounds. My boyfriend and I live in an apartment with my dog. We moved in together last year, but we've been dating for 4 years. In December, my boyfriend's mom invited herself to come visit us in the summer. Now, when she decided this, we were under the impression that she would stay at a hotel or something. We live in a small, really small 2-bedroom apartment, but we use the second room as a shared office space. But whatever, we'll deal. We can throw in a bed and move the room around. However, 3 weeks ago, she was talking to my boyfriend saying she would be staying for 2 weeks because she wanted to sightsee and because she really wanted to be with us. I could tell he was happy about this because he misses her and doesn't get to see her a lot because we live so far away from her. I wasn't going to argue with it because I know it makes him happy. However, then she called again last week. She told my boyfriend that she wouldn't feel comfortable if Tank was in the apartment with her because he's big and you can't trust dogs like that. She said she didn't feel comfortable with his size or breed. Also that he could be unpredictable because I got him a yearish old and don't know about his past. She asked my boyfriend if he would have my dog boarded the whole time while she was there. He brought it up 3 days ago and I immediately said no. He asked me if I would think about it and I said no again. Now he's angry with me. I'm fine with everything else, but I draw the line at leaving Tank in a boarding facility for 2 weeks straight. I've never done something like that with him. I don't want to risk anything. I even looked into it just at the pricing and it's too expensive. This is his home and he deserves to stay here. I've never had a problem with her before, but this is ridiculous. She's never met Tank in person before and she gets a lot of pictures and videos of him. When we video chat her, sometimes he joins in. She's never said anything about her concerns before. He isn't a bad dog, but she doesn't want him at the apartment at all while she's there. Am I the asshole because I won't board Tank while she visits? Part 2, am I the asshole for not sending my dog to boarding while my boyfriend's mom visits? After about a week of silence, waiting for each other to bring this up, I bypassed my boyfriend and went to his mom. I reached out and talked about her feelings for Tank. It started out pleasant. Then I told her BF said that she wanted my dog boarded. I asked why she didn't feel comfortable with Tank. Her direct quote was, "You don't know what his past is. He's big and unpredictable and I don't want to be staying with that. It would be different if you knew, but you don't. I just don't feel comfortable sharing a space with a dog that may attack me for going to pee in the middle of the night or grabbing a cup of water." I was angry and didn't want to scream to make her upset, so I said very politely, "If you don't feel comfortable living with Tank for 2 weeks, even though your own son has been since August, you can stay in a hotel while you visit." And I hung up on her. My boyfriend got home a few hours later and was angry because I talked to her, made her upset, and then hung up on her. Now she thinks I hate her. He said I wasn't being fair to her. I asked why he wanted me to board Tank so badly. He knows he wouldn't attack her or do anything aggressive towards her. All he had to say was boil down to, "Can't you just do it to make this whole thing easier? He's a dog." We argued at some point in circles. How Tank is a dog, he doesn't get rights in the apartment, and things got worse when I asked what would happen in the future if we were still together and she decided to visit when we were living in a house. He said that it would be different because we could put him in a room or something. So my dog has to be penalized for living in our home with us when your mom visits? When I adopted Tank, I took responsibility of taking care of him, making him my first priority, and treating him with respect as he is a living creature. I see him as I would a child. I do the same things for him as someone does for a child. He is family, 4 paws or not. I made a clear choice that night. While his mother may still be visiting whenever it is safe to do so, it won't be in this apartment. We came to a truth. This and other things we talked about are big and can't be ignored. We realized we don't want the same things and it's not something you can compromise on. So, this all started with what I thought would eventually be my future mother-in-law wanting me to board my dog and ended up with me and my boyfriend mutually breaking up after 4 years of dating.
My niece Jenny went through trauma as a kid and ended up becoming an emotional eater, obese, held back a grade, and socially stunned. Her parents, with a lot of pushing, put her into therapy and she was able to heal from the trauma and gain control of her eating. Because they waited so long to take the problem seriously, after she lost the weight, her skin didn't bounce back and she was left with a saggy belly. She had a double roll belly where there's a roll above and below the navel and the bottom one tends to stick out in clothing. Nothing she did would fix it. Her parents are very much anti-plastic surgery and given that she was a teenager, I totally get it, but she was miserable in her body. Jenny stays with me during the summers because I live near a beach and I love spending time with her. Over the years, she would cry and cry to me about how much she hated her stomach and how she just wishes she could look normal and her parents would not let her get a tummy tuck. Last year, I decided that I would give her the tummy tuck for her 18th birthday as long as she cleared it with her counselor. The counselor agreed that this was something that would truly help. She had done it late in the summer, healed while staying with me, and then went to college. I can't begin to tell you the kind of different person she became. Confident, happy, she finally wore clothes that didn't hide her body in the whole 9 yards. She came home from spring break and finally wore something that made her mom take notice, and I'm guessing mom saw the scar. She hit the roof and started yelling at Jenny for what she did, asking her if she really spent her college money for something this frivolous. Jenny came crying to me about it and I knew I couldn't let her mom blame her, so I fessed up. I am now completely blacklisted. My sister basically thinks I'm Satan, warping her kids' self-esteem and self-image. I should have told her to learn to love her body instead of giving into diet culture. Jenny is healthier and happier than she's ever been before. Furthermore, she was 18 and this is something she has wanted since she was about 15. It didn't lead her to wanting more surgeries. It led her to sobbing happy tears after she tried on a curve-fitting dress for the first time. I don't see what I did was wrong at all. At the same time, I know she's not my kid and we went behind my sister's back. Plastic surgery is a big deal, so I don't know. My husband and I had our daughter about a week ago. Early in the pregnancy, we chose her name but kept it quiet. Her first name is after my husband's late mom, and her middle name is my favorite flower. The name caused a stir with my husband's family because since he was 8, he had a stepmom, and not only did he honor his mom, but so did his brother when he had a son, by giving a male sort of equivalent of their mom's name. And this had upset their stepmom because they have never bonded with her or considered her their mom, and she feels disrespected in her. This past week, we had a neighbor stop by while my husband's family was visiting the baby, and she asked about the name choice, and I told her she was named after my husband's mom. My neighbor said it was lovely and left, and then my husband's dad and stepmom turned on me for saying that, without acknowledging that he had another mom in the room and making her feel even more looked over. My husband told them that he has only one mother and that they need to get over it and that they should apologize to me or leave. It kind of blew up from there. My husband's half and step siblings are all upset that I would say that in front of stepmom. Pretty much everyone there is mad except my husband and his brother, who was furious that stepmom referred to herself as their mom. I guess I just feel a little bad because I know my husband and his brother could never find a way to let their stepmom in and it hurts her. But I also see how much they love their mom and that they're good people who have happy lives. This has just been a thing for 20 years now, and I wonder if I was being insensitive. But I also know that in my husband and brother-in-law's hearts, their mom is their only mom and maternal figure, and I was respecting their feelings on it. I guess I'm just feeling a little, I don't know, uncertain. So am I the asshole? I am the eldest of 3 sisters, 23, 19, and 17. My youngest sister's boyfriend has made these really weird eyes at me before and has said flirty things, which I've always ignored and told her about. She would just go, LOL, that's just how he is. He doesn't mean anything by it. That's trifling as hell because you are my baby sister's boyfriend and it's gross AF for so many other reasons. Last night, my middle sister came to my apartment just to hang out. One minute we were watching Netflix and drinking wine, and the next minute she's breaking down crying, confessing that over her winter break, she slept with our younger sister's boyfriend. I was so shocked, the ability of speech failed me in that moment. I just sat there flabbergasted as she gave me the entire 4-week account of this fling that she had with him. She had just gotten out of a longish-term relationship herself and was heartbroken. According to her, he was around and down for whatever. When she was done, I asked her why she was telling me this, and she said that she hoped I'd be able to tell her what to do. I told her this is going to crush our sister because she has always talked about being the ugly little sister and being stuck in our shadows, which couldn't be farther from the truth. She really placed a lot of her self-worth and value in this relationship and she will be devastated. I think she deserves to know, so I told her that you need to tell her ASAP or I will. She said that it wasn't my place, and I told her, you included me in this. I was perfectly content to watch Grey's Anatomy and cry my eyes out, and then you turned my apartment into a confessional. After I took her home, I wondered if there was a better way to approach this that wasn't so confrontational. I'm open to suggestions, particularly those that will not destroy my sister's relationship, because I take absolutely no joy in being the bearer of shitty news.
Story time about how my dad and I caught my boyfriend and his wife cheating on us in a tent. So luckily this is not my real mom. This is my stepmom. Her and my dad married a few years ago. So my family and my boyfriend's family are pretty close. My boyfriend's parents and my parents, aka my stepmom and my dad, get along with his parents. A little backstory on my stepmom. After my dad and my mom got divorced, he met her and they started dating pretty quickly. And they got married after only 5 months of having dated. So she becomes my stepmom, but she never really made any effort to get to know me. And I never really liked her. Like, she gave me a weird feeling. So my boyfriend and his family asked us to go on a camping trip one time. And my dad and I didn't really want to go because we never really go out. But my stepmom was super keen on going and she finally convinced us to go, so we ended up going. I mean, in the back of my mind, I was like, wait, why do you want to go to this camping trip so much? We finally get there and set up our camping tents. That's when my dear stepmom says that she doesn't want me and my boyfriend sleeping in the same tent just in case we try to do something. In other words, she didn't want him and I to do the dirty. Why? Because she was hoping that my boyfriend and her would do the dirty. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my dad and I caught my boyfriend and his wife doing the dirty. Literally right next to us. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said in part 1, my stepmom said that my boyfriend and I couldn't sleep in the same tent because she didn't want us doing anything. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that during this time, my stepmom and my dad were always fighting and they were totally ignoring each other, so they couldn't sleep in the same tent. So basically my dad and I were sleeping in the same tent. My stepmom was in another tent. We all go to bed and everyone's asleep. That's when I started hearing like the noise of plants ruffling. I ignored it and I went back to sleep. But then I heard some giggling coming from the tent. So I start walking over to my boyfriend's tent because that's where all the giggling is coming from. I was trying not to be heard, and as I started getting closer to the tent, I tripped over and fell into the tent. That's when both my stepmom and my boyfriend start screaming, and I see them sitting naked in the tent. That's when my boyfriend started lying, saying that she forgot something in his tent and that's why she was there. And it gets worse. My dad wakes up and hears all the commotion. He comes over to find his wife and my boyfriend naked. Part 3 of how my dad and I caught his wife and my boyfriend doing the dirty right next to us. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said in part 2, I fall into the tent and catch my boyfriend naked with my stepmom in it. That's when my dad comes over and sees them both naked. And my dad just started going nuts. He started yelling at my stepmom. My dad was so hurt. And I was too, but I was also in shock from seeing my stepmom naked. I couldn't believe that my boyfriend had been hooking up with my stepmom all this time. And like right under my dad's and my nose. That's when my dad and I were just yelling at them. But then my dad called an Uber and we went home. He went straight to his lawyer and filed for divorce. But of course, my stepmom didn't want to sign the divorce papers, so it took really long for my dad to finally get divorced from that witch. Oh yeah, and I haven't spoken to my ex ever since the day I caught him naked with my stepmom. I never even got an apology, not one from him. Time for shoutouts. I will be choosing one person from my live to give a shout out to in my next story time. So today's shout out is for Cindy_the tree. Another story time is coming the day after tomorrow. Bye.
Storytime about how I found out my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend was spying on us in the bedroom. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My boyfriend and I have been together for 1 year. Our relationship is really good. We're like best friends and we tell each other everything. He always wants to spend time with me and we're planning on moving in together. Our families love each other and they're looking forward to us getting married someday. I'll call my boyfriend Dan. When Dan and I started dating, he told me that he had a really crazy ex. He was extremely controlling and didn't let him hang out with his friends or even his family. And when he broke up with her, she went nuts. She actually told her family that he was abusive just to get back at him. When we got together, Dan told me that he was scared his ex might try to do something to us. I told him not to worry, that she wouldn't do anything at all. Boy, was I wrong. Dan had his own apartment and I would stay at his place most nights. And of course, we did stuff in his bedroom. One night that we're on his bed doing stuff, I see a little tiny lens on his bookshelf pointing straight to us. I hadn't noticed it before, so I asked him what it was. He said he didn't know, so he went to it and pulled it out. It was a tiny little camera. Part 2 is up. When my boyfriend and I are doing the dirty on his bed, I notice there's a little lens pointing straight at us. He goes to grab it and we realize it's a little camera. The whole time we've been doing stuff on his bed, it's been recording us. That's when my boyfriend Dan said that it must have been his crazy ex. Let's call her Casey. He had told me that she was really crazy, but I didn't think she was that crazy. Dan starts looking throughout his whole apartment and he finds 2 more little cameras. One in the kitchen and one in the bathroom. As you can imagine, we didn't sleep that entire night. Of course, we went to the police and they opened an investigation, but they said they couldn't find anything. A week later, I get a DM from Casey, his ex-girlfriend. She starts abusing me through DM, calling me a bunch of names. She even said that I stole Dan from her, but I hadn't even met Dan when they broke up. Then she sends me a picture of my house, which means she knows where I live. I go straight to my boyfriend's apartment, and when I open the door, guess who's there? Casey is sitting on the couch with my boyfriend. It gets scarier. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend's crazy ex is sitting on the couch and I'm terrified. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. She had just finished sending me a bunch of DMs on Instagram totally abusing me. But my boyfriend didn't know this. I walk into the apartment and they're both sitting on the couch. She turns around and asks him, is that her? My boyfriend looks at me with a serious face and says, yes, that's her. Then she shows me DMs on Instagram that I had supposedly sent to some guy, and that she passed herself off as this guy to see if I would fall. And the messages were so dirty and disgusting. I tell my boyfriend that's not me and that I would never do that to him. He just stares at me and doesn't say anything. That's when I try to show him all of the DMs that she had just sent me, but I noticed they were all gone. She actually unsent every single DM. Now I had no proof and it was just her word against mine. That's when I accused her of planting the cameras in our bedroom. She actually smiled at me and turned around and told my boyfriend she would never do that. Then she slapped.
Storytime on how a man followed me into my apartment and tried to harm me. Okay, so boom. I'm 19 years old and I've been living alone for the past year. It's just me and my pet dog, and every morning and night I walk my dog. A bad habit that I have is that since I live in a safe neighborhood, every time I go downstairs to walk my dog, I leave my door unlocked. I never thought that anyone was even watching me, to be honest. My thought process was like, since the door is closed, no one is going to actually think it's unlocked. But that wasn't very smart of me. One very scary night, my life changed. It was around 10 o'clock at night, and I did my usual routine and started walking my dog. I left my door unlocked and thought nothing of it, especially since around this time, no one is really outside. I went back upstairs to the 4th floor where I stay and opened my door, then walked inside and closed my door. But I didn't lock it just yet. I was taking off my dog's leash. Then all of a sudden, a 40-year-old man opened my door. At this point, I was at a distance from the door and closer to my bedroom. My dog started barking, and then I said, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" But I did say it in fear. Then the man took a step in my door and said, "I just want to talk." My door was still slightly open but more closed, and he was fully into my home at this point. He told me to go into my room and be quiet or else he would use his weapon. He had a GUN. I didn't want him to do anything to me, so I listened. But I had hope because I also had my boyfriend's GUN in my room. My boyfriend leaves it there so I can protect myself. I never thought I would have to use it, but I'm glad my boyfriend thought of my safety, regardless of what I said. I walked to my room shaking with him about 10 steps behind me. I told my dog to heel because I didn't want this man to harm my dog either. As soon as I walked into my room, I took the GUN and shot him. The man fell to the ground and so did his weapon. I turned on the lights and shot him right in the stomach around here on his side. My neighbors all came out after the shot and we all called the cops. They got there pretty fast. And my boyfriend stayed with me for 3 months every day after that. They did an investigation and looked at the cameras. Turned out that he'd been stalking me the whole time. He knew my habits and planned to get me at the right time. Even if you feel alone, someone can be watching. I'm grateful for my boyfriend for leaving his weapon with me. He has like 3, but leaving one with me saved my life. Who knows what would have happened to me had I not shot this man. The shot missed his abdominal muscle, so he lived, but it's going to be a sad life. Okay, so boom, like I said, he knew all my habits and planned to get me at the right time. You never know who's watching you, even if you feel alone. The shot missed his abdominal muscle, so he lived. But it's going to be a sad life. The doctor said that his injury looks like eventually it would lead to death. And even if it doesn't, he will be very weak and fragile. So he couldn't hurt anyone even if he wanted to. But until then, he will be in jail. So no matter how safe you feel, make sure you are protecting yourself. And don't be like me doing stupid things like leaving your door unlocked. It takes 2 seconds to lock your door, and that could be the difference from life or death. Stay safe, guys, both men and women.
This was one of my first times getting pulled over, and it was literally, like, weird. Like, this cop was sus. So back in the summer this year, I had bought myself a car, an $800 Honda Civic. It was disgusting. It was a very ugly car, but I needed it because at the time I didn't have a car. And I had just gotten my license plate in. The metal license plate, oh yeah. And I had put it on my back window, like, you know, the window in the back by your trunk. I set it on there. That's not illegal. That is perfectly legal, and people do it all the time. It is 10 o'clock at night. I'm leaving my boyfriend's house, and I'm driving down this road when all of a sudden I notice there's a cop behind me. And I'm like, okay, no big deal. I just won't speed. Like, just go the speed limit, no biggie. So they're behind me for like a mile. And I'm like, okay, this is getting a little weird. So then I get to a four-way stop. And there's another car pulling up to the four-way stop. So I go, the other car at the four-way stop goes behind me, and then the cop goes behind that car. I'm like, okay, I'm cool. I'm not gonna get pulled over. Then all of a sudden, this lovely cop goes around the car, turns on his lights, and pulls me over. I'm like, okay, cool. I pull over, and I'm like, I really don't know what I'm getting in trouble for. Like, I didn't do anything. I was going the speed limit. He comes up to my car. He asks for my license and registration. He asks how old I am. I tell him my age, give him my license and registration. He goes back to his car. He doesn't tell me what I got pulled over for, so I'm still like, what's happening? So I'm waiting in my car. Then he comes back up to my window, and he's like, ma'am, I'm gonna have you step out of the vehicle. When I tell you, I literally pooped my pants. I was like, wow, I'm about to get arrested. I'm literally about to get arrested. Like, this is it. I look at my boyfriend who was also in the car. I'm like, this is it for me. And he's like wide-eyed, like, oh my God. Because I'm telling you, cops don't just have you get out of the car. So I step out of the car, and he takes me over to his police car, and he's like, how old are you again? I'm like, 16. And he's like, how old is that guy in the car with you? And I'm like, oh, 19. And then he gets really close to me like this. He goes, are your parents okay with that? I'm like, yeah. Yeah, they're okay with it. Then he asks me what my curfew is. I'm like, oh, 11 o'clock. You know, gotta get going. You're holding me back. About to be late. He's like, okay. He gives me my license and registrations back. Lets me go back to my car. And he informs me, finally, that he pulled me over because my license plate was on the wrong side of my car. It was on the right side, and it was supposed to be on the left side. That it's illegal for my license plate to be on the right side. I don't think that's correct, but okay. I was scared. He made me nervous. Like, he got up in my face and was like, are your parents okay with that? Okay, yes they are. And if they weren't, what are you going to do? If my parents were not okay with it, what were you gonna do? Frickin' arrest me? Frickin' arrest him? Call my dad? Like, okay. Also, I know y'all are gonna ask for proof, so here's a video I made while I was getting pulled over. Maybe the cop had a crush on me. Give me a kiss. My school tried to expel me for making a TikTok. Expelled for making a TikTok. So on the third day of school, literally school had just started. Me and this girl had an altercation in the hallway. It wasn't a fight, but it was, I don't know. I don't know what to classify it as, but I'm not gonna get into details because I don't want to rehash drama with this girl because I genuinely don't care that much. But obviously, since we had made a scene in the hallway, we had to go down to the principal's office. So I go down to the principal's office, and as soon as I walk into the office, they make me give them my phone and put it on a bookshelf that I can't reach. And I'm like, why can't I have my phone? And they're like, we don't want you to be recording this interaction you're having with us and posting it on TikTok. And I'm like, okay, a little weird, whatever. Then they inform me that they know all about my TikTok, they keep updated on it, and they know everything that I post. And I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's cool. I didn't really care because I don't post anything bad on my TikTok account. Like, my entire family sees it. Why would I care if my principal saw it? You know what I mean? It was a little weird, but whatever. I'm talking to the principal about the altercation I had with the girl in the hallway, you know, filling them in, giving my side of the story. I'm thinking I'm about to get, like, sent back down to class. And all of a sudden, one of the other principals walks in. And I don't know why, but for some reason, my old school had, like, 5 principals. So one of the other ones walks in. They look me dead in the eye, and he goes, what do you post on your TikTok account? And I'm like, oh, I just post story times, like stuff like that. He then proceeds to whip out his phone and pull up a TikTok I made over a year ago. Like, this TikTok was so old. It was back when COVID had first started. I had orange and black hair. Like, this TikTok was so old. He then plays the TikTok, and it's a TikTok of me telling a story about how in 8th grade I almost got into a fight. And by the way, in that story, I used completely fake names. I even switched around details in that story so that it wasn't so obvious who I was talking about. But the main part is that I used fake names. I did not say anybody's real name in that story. So once we're done watching my TikTok, he's like, so we know you made that TikTok about the girl you had the altercation with in the hallway. And I'm like, but I didn't say her name. They're like, that doesn't matter. And I'm like, ooh, but I also made that TikTok a year ago. I don't know why it's relevant now. And they're like, that doesn't matter. So I'm like, okay, cool. They then threatened to expel me for making that video. And I'm sitting there like so confused. And I'm like, y'all, I did not say anybody's name. Fake names all the way. And it was made a year ago. I would get it if I posted it yesterday. But this was posted a year ago, honey. So they're just sitting down lecturing me, telling me to stop posting on TikTok. And then this is where the kicker is. They tell me that this TikTok I made a year ago is going to go on my record, on my school record. So yeah. So they put down a TikTok I made with fake names, posted a year ago, on my school record. Then they said if I ever talked about this situation that I'm talking about now, I would be facing expulsion if I ever talked about this on TikTok. Expulsion. Facing expulsion for making a TikTok. But obviously, I don't care now because I don't go to that school anymore.
Story time about how I hooked up with my stepbrother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My dad and I moved to a new town after he got divorced from my mom. The plan would be that I would split my time with my mom and my dad. Now, with the divorce, I actually got really depressed and it really did affect me. Also, I had just turned 18 at the time and I didn't really want to go to college, so I didn't know what to do with my life. My mom asked me if I wanted to go on a trip to Europe with her and I said yes. So my mom and I traveled for about 2 months. When I got home, I decided to go spend time with my dad for a few months. Well, guess what? He already had a new girlfriend. And of course, this affected me really, really badly. And my mom too. Her and I were both surprised that he moved on so quickly. His new girlfriend was okay. She was much younger than my mom, but still older than me. But here's the thing, she had 4 kids. She invited me and my dad to come over for dinner so that we could get to know her kids a bit better. Mind you, I had never met them at this point. I had just gotten back from Europe. So I go over to their house for dinner, and as soon as I walk in, I am greeted by the 2 most beautiful guys I have ever seen in my entire life. They were both in their early 20s, and like I said, I was 18. The other 2 kids were teenagers. Throughout the dinner, I couldn't stop staring at both of these guys. I was really trying not to be obvious, but I had just never seen such beautiful guys. It turns out one of them was actually a model, and the other one was a bodybuilder. So you can imagine what they might have looked like. Also, throughout the dinner, they kept making eye contact with me. It was almost like they were competing. After dinner, my dad and I went back to his place. This is when my dad asked me what I really thought of his girlfriend. And I told him that I didn't think he should have moved on that quickly, but at the same time, she was actually a good person. She obviously cared about her kids, and they had a pretty good life. That's when my dad told me that he was going to ask her to marry him. They had not been together very long, but I said, okay. Of course, my dad asked me to plan the whole thing with him. He proposed, and of course, she said yes. And this is when it hit me. These 2 really attractive guys were now going to be my stepbrothers. Awkward. This also meant that I started hanging out more and more at their house. My dad and I would go over for dinners, we would all spend the day in the pool, and basically just hang out. And this meant that I started getting to know my stepbrothers a little better. Right away, I could tell that they were starting to flirt with me while we were all together and separately. Of course, I was totally single, so I was like, well, you know, whatever. After dinner one night, my dad asked me if I was interested in one of them. And I was like, no, Dad. He told me that I couldn't stop staring at the guys and that I needed to calm down. Oh my God. I was totally blushing and I told him that nothing was going to happen and not to worry. I decided to put some space between me and the guys. One of them actually decided to reach out on Instagram and ask me why I was being so cold. Obviously, I didn't tell him that my dad told me to stay away from them, so I just pretended like I didn't know what he was talking about. That's when he asked me if I wanted to join him and his friends to go to the movies. I couldn't resist and I said yes. While we were watching the movie, he actually grabbed onto my hand and kissed it. And he kissed me, part two. That's when my stepbrother grabbed my hand and kissed me in the movie theater. I was totally shocked. I knew that he had been flirting with me, but I didn't think that he was going to take it that far as to kiss me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I repeat, this is not my story time. By the way, we were with two of his other friends. So these guys knew that I was his stepsister. After the movie, we all went back to his car and they drove me home. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. Obviously, I was already falling in love with him. I mean, he was so cute, so nice, and he liked me. The following day, my dad and I went over to his girlfriend's house, aka the mother of my stepbrother. That's when my stepbrother came up to me and grabbed my hand. I pulled it away as soon as I could because I thought someone had seen us. Luckily, the coast was clear. He took me to his bedroom and we just made out, while the rest of the family is downstairs having food. After about 10 minutes, we decided to go back downstairs. My stepbrother sat next to me and underneath the table, he kept grabbing my knee. I was terrified that someone would see this. I mean, it's almost like he didn't care if we got caught. After that, my dad and I went home. And about 30 minutes after we got home, my stepbrother calls me and tells me that he's out front. I told him there was no way I could let him in and that he should just go home. And before I knew it, he had snuck in through my window. This is when I realized that I needed him to calm down because if we got caught, my dad would get really upset. I told him that he shouldn't have done that and that he needed to go home. That's when he confessed that he was in love with me. I mean, we had known each other for a few months, but we had only kissed like twice. He told me from the moment he set his eyes on me, he couldn't stop thinking about me. And he told me that him and his stepbrother actually fought over who would get to date me. I was actually flattered, but also concerned. That's when he told me that we should just date and we shouldn't care what our parents think. At first I said no, but then he kept trying to convince me. Suddenly, my dad knocks on my door and asks me who I'm talking to. Part 3 is up. As my stepbrother is confessing to me that he's in love with me, my dad knocks on the door. My stomach sank really quick. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I repeat, this is not my story time. My dad knocks on the door and asks me who I'm talking to. That's when my stepbrother runs into my closet and just hides. I opened the door and explained to my dad that I was on the phone with a friend. He said okay and just left, but I could tell that he was suspicious. I let my stepbrother out of the closet and told him to leave. That's when he said that he wanted to stay over. Oh my God, I could have just died at that moment. That's when my dad opens the door and catches him. That's when my dad chased him around the house and told him to leave. I was beyond mortified. Oh, and I forgot to mention, my dad and my stepmom were already married. So he calls her and tells her everything that happened. Of course, I denied that he and I did anything, but my dad was not believing me. He told me that while I still lived under his roof, I had to follow his rules. And that meant not dating my stepbrother. The very next day, my stepbrother calls me and asks me to move in with him. He told me that we should get our own apartment and that way we can be happy together. Honestly, I didn't even know what to say because I wasn't in love with him like he said he was in love with me. Of course, this made my dad even more angry. He warned my stepbrother to stay away from me. Obviously, this is causing problems between him and his new wife. And yeah, I feel really bad. Now that I haven't seen my stepbrother in about a week, I'm starting to realize that maybe I am in love with him. Because I can't stop thinking about him and all I want to do is spend time with him and call him. So I'm seriously considering moving in with him, but I'm not sure how this is going to affect my dad or his new marriage. I mean, it's not like we're blood related and I'm already 18. So my dad kind of has to accept this, but he's so stubborn. Now my stepbrother wants me to be his girlfriend and I don't know what to say. I really need some advice. Help.